The Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia disintegrated into 5 successor states: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Slovenia, and the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, later known as Serbia and Montenegro, after being torn apart by the rise of ethno-nationalism, a series of political conflicts, and a greater Serbian expansion. Watch the video till the end as we explain the details behind the breakup of Yugoslavia. The booming days. From 1918 to 1992, Yugoslavia was a multi-ethnic state in southeastern Europe known as the Balkans. It was a regional industrial force and an economic success before it fell apart. Yugoslavia's annual GDP growth averaged 6.1% between 1960 and 1980, while medical care was completely free and literacy rate was 91%, with a life expectancy of 72 years. On top of all this, Yugoslavia's armed forces were among one of the best equipped in Europe. Yugoslavia straddled the east and west. Furthermore, its president, Josip Broz Tito, was a founding member of the Third World, which was a counter-nation to the superpowers of the world. In addition, Yugoslavia also served as a buffer between the West and the Soviet Union, preventing the Soviets from gaining a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea. However, due to growing nationalist grievances and the Communist Party's desire to support national self-determination, the central government's grip began to erode with time. The beginning of crisis. Yugoslavia implemented a socialist economy that combined market and command elements. This strategy, which focused on worker self-management, was initially quite effective, bringing the country rapid economic growth. Nonetheless, Yugoslavia was severely impacted by the late 1970s oil shock, aggravated by the country's socialist economy's increasing inefficiencies. Real wages fell in the 1980s when average GDP growth was barely 1.1% from 1980 to 1989, and the economy subsequently crashed by 11.6% in 1990, unemployment having peaked at 16% in the late 80s. As a result of the prolonged economic recession, Yugoslavs lost faith in socialist economic and political institutions, which aided the rise of nationalist groups. After World War II, the country was restructured into a federation of 6 member republics: Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Slovenia, and Montenegro. There were also 2 autonomous regions inside Serbia, Vojvodina and Kosovo, the latter of which had an ethnic Albanian majority. Despite the fact that they spoke practically the same language, the 2 main ethnic groups, Serbs and Croats, had never resided in the same country before 1918. In terms of religion, Yugoslavia was divided. Serbs and Macedonians were predominantly Christian Orthodox, Croats and Slovenes were predominantly Catholic, and Bosniaks and Albanians were predominantly Muslim. Despite suppressing civil rights, repressing political opponents, and making opposition illegal, communists gave each republic significant cultural autonomy while attempting to forge a united Yugoslav identity. Under Josip Broz Tito, the country's communist president from 1945 to 1980, this tactic was highly successful. Tito's 1974 constitution also established a system of year-long presidency rotations among the 8 leaders of the republics and autonomous provinces in order to ensure his legacy. Essentially, it created a power vacuum that lasted for the majority of the following years. However, Tito's death demonstrated that such brief terms were futile. Announced on May 4, 1980, Tito's death took away Yugoslavia's principal unifying force, and ethnic tensions in the country began to rise as a result. The Yugoslav crisis was linked to the collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe near the conclusion of the Cold War, which led to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The National Communist Party of Yugoslavia, officially known as the League of Communists of Yugoslavia, had lost its ideological foundation. The controversial memorandum criticizing the weakening of the Serbian central government, drafted by the Serbian Academy of Science and Arts in 1986, contributed greatly to the emergence of nationalist sentiments. The rising ethnic tensions. Meanwhile, ethnic tensions between Serbs and Albanians rose significantly in the Serbian Socialist autonomous province of Kosovo. This, combined with Kosovo's and Serbia's economic issues, increased Serbian hatred of the 1974 constitution. Beginning in the early 1980s, Kosovo Albanians began to demand that Kosovo be granted the status of a constituent republic, particularly after the protests in Kosovo in 1981. Because of Serbians' historic ties to Kosovo, this was viewed by the Serbian populace as a terrible blow to Serb pride, and was thought that secession would be disastrous for the Serbs of Kosovo. Matters became even worse when the Bosnian agro-commerce enterprise turned out to be at the center of a vast nexus of corruption spanning all of Yugoslavia, and the managers of agro-commerce issued promissory notes worth nearly $1 billion without collateral, forcing the state to assume responsibility for their debts. When agro-commerce finally collapsed, the austerity policies led to the uncovering of huge corruption by the elites. In a time of struggle for the general population, this massive corruption in Yugoslavia resulted in discredit of the communist system, as it was shown that the ruling elites were enjoying extravagant lifestyles much above the capabilities of regular people. Corruption and the role of Slobodan Milosevic. By the mid-1980s, the issues caused by high debt and corruption had begun to undermine the legitimacy of the communist system, as ordinary people began to lose faith in the leaders' competence and honesty. Frustration and animosity grew over a decade of austerity directed at both the Serbian ruling elite and minorities who appeared to benefit from government policies. This was quite evident, as between 1979 to 1985, Yugoslavia's real earnings plummeted by 25%. Slobodan Milosevic, a Serbian officer, was dispatched to the autonomous province of Kosovo in 1987 to quell a racially motivated protest by Serbs against the Albanian administration. Milosevic had been a hard-line communist who had denounced all types of nationalism as treason up to this time, such as criticizing the Sarnu Memorandum as nothing more than the darkest nationalism. However, because Kosovo's autonomy had always been a divisive topic in Serbia, he took advantage of the situation and broke with customary communist neutrality on the matter. Slobodan Milosevic exploited the nationalist card to increase his political influence and appeal. He denounced alleged oppression of the ethnic Serbs by the Albanian-dominated regional government of Kosovo in a famous speech in April 1987. Milosevic became Serbia's most influential politician in February 1988 and the republic's president soon after. Milosevic replaced the governments of Montenegro and two autonomous regions of Serbia, also known as Kosovo, and Vojvodina, with his loyalists in an anti-bureaucratic revolution in 1988 to 1989. Ethnic Albanians in Kosovo, who had been denied regional autonomy, became increasingly enraged as a result. Milosevic and his allies also pursued an aggressive nationalist agenda within Yugoslavia, promising reforms and the safety of all Serbs. The breakup. However, after the passage of revisions to the Serbian constitution in March 1989, the crisis in Yugoslavia worsened, allowing the Serbian Republic's government to reassert effective control over the autonomous provinces of Kosovo and Vojvodina. Until that time, a number of political choices were made inside these provinces, and they had a vote at the Yugoslav federal president level, with 6 Republicans and 2 autonomous provinces voting. Europe's end of the Cold War was also a major factor in the disintegration of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was a socialist, one-party state that was not associated with the Soviet Union during the Cold War and remained neutral. However, because it shared political and economic institutions with the Soviet Union and its supporters, developments in that country had a direct impact on Yugoslavia. In November 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, Yugoslavs desired similar liberties after attentively observing the situation in neighboring nations. In fact, the crucial events in the disintegration of Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union occurred at the same time in 1991. Most Yugoslav republics held free elections in April and May 1990, with people in Slovenia, Croatia, and Macedonia voting for change, choosing nationalist administrations. Bosnia was taken over by a multi-ethnic coalition of non-communist parties. Following the establishment of new nationalist administrations in Slovenia, Croatia and Macedonia, they asked that Yugoslavia be transformed into a confederation of sovereign republics, a demand that Milosevic, who remained in power in Serbia, instantly rejected. In response, the republics still demanded independence, and an overwhelming majority of voters in Slovenia, Croatia and Macedonia voted in favor of it in referendums held between December 1990 and September 1991. Consequently, Slovenia gained independence in June 1991, with Macedonia following suit in September of the same year. Interestingly, all of this was legal under Serbia's constitution. The Independence War. The success of the Croatian nationalists did not sit well with the Serb minority, who wanted the country to remain part of Yugoslavia. So, after Croatia and Slovenia declared independence, things came to a head. Milosevic, who was in charge of the Yugoslav military at the time, retaliated with armed aggression against Slovenia and Croatia in order to prevent them from gaining independence. However, Slovenia's war lasted only 10 days and claimed the lives of 63 people in total. Serbia allowed Slovenia and Macedonia to split successfully, owing to the fact that both nations had only a small Serbian minority. On the other hand, it was completely different in the case of Croatia, as the first phase of the Croatian War of Independence lasted until January 1992. Ethnic Croats were driven out of Serb-majority Krajina and Western Slavonia. The conflict stalled until Croatia retook the breakaway territory in 2 military operations in May and August 1995. Most ethnic Serbs residing there fled to Serbia. This war resulted in almost 22,000 people dying in the fighting. International acceptance. While France, the United Kingdom and most other European Union member states continued to stress the need to maintain Yugoslavia's unity, the then German Chancellor Helmut Kohl led the campaign to recognize Slovenia and Croatia as the first 2 breakaway countries. He urged national governments and the EU to support their objectives, and even traveled to Belgrade to pressure the federal government to not employ military force, and threatened them with sanctions if they did. As a result of his efforts, Germany, against the advice of the European Community, recognized the independence of Slovenia and Croatia. Bosnia and Herzegovina's independence proved to be the ultimate blow to Yugoslavia's pan-Yugoslav Socialist Federal Republic. Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence on March 3, 1992, and received international recognition on April 6, 1992. On the same day, the Serbs replied by declaring the Republika Srpska independent and laying siege to Sarajevo, kicking off the Bosnian War. On May 22, 1992, the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina was admitted to the United Nations as a member state, which resulted in NATO bombings against Bosnian Serb targets in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This helped in the signing of the Dayton Agreement and the end of this war. This was the most deadly of independence wars, as it took the lives of around 100,000 people. That's it from today's video. If you found it interesting and helpful, then make sure to hit the like button and make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you never miss out on any of the amazing and informative videos we have in store for you.